Hello, and welcome to episode 485 of the Juicebox Podcast. Guess who's on the show today? Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Jenny Smith. Jenny, of course, is from all the Defining Diabetes episodes and the Pro Tip series. And today she's here to talk about how people can be altered in their minds when their blood sugars are high or low, right? So if you're looking for an understanding of what high and low might make someone feel like or could make you feel like, this is the episode for you. During this conversation, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Jenny holds a bachelor's degree in human nutrition and biology from the University of Wisconsin. She's a registered and licensed dietitian, a certified diabetes educator, and a certified trainer on most makes and models of insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors. One day when I grow up, I hope to be just like Jenny. The T1D Exchange needs 6,000 people to join their registry. And I have to keep saying this to you until you do it. So, the T1D Exchange is looking for T1D adults and T1D caregivers who are U.S. residents. They want you to participate in a quick survey that can be completed in just a few minutes from your phone or computer. After you finish the questions, and they are very simple, I completed the survey in about 7 minutes, you may be contacted annually to update your information, and they may even ask you a couple more questions. But this is 100% anonymous. It is completely HIPAA compliant, and it does not require you to ever visit a doctor or go to a remote site. See, this is interesting. This is a way for you in just a few minutes to help other people living with type 1 diabetes. Past participants have helped bring increased coverage for test strips, Medicare coverage for CGMs, and changes in the ADA's guideline for pediatric A1C goals. These are important behind-the-scenes things that people with type 1 diabetes need, and you have a unique opportunity to help them. These are not deep, probing personal questions. They're pretty simple, basic, surface diabetes stuff, but they just need the data. Help them at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. And at the very least, if 6,000 of you go right now, I don't have to say this again. Do it for me. I'm kidding. Do it for the other people living with type 1 diabetes. But I mean, if you want to think of me while you're doing it, it's fine. This one's weird, but we'll see.
That means it came from somebody.
It came from somebody, but it's not.
It came from somebody.
But it made a lot of sense to me when they said it, and then I left it on my list for a long time. And every time I look at the list, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that, I think. So,
okay. Hopefully, I have something to say.
We'll
about
see.
It.
So I'm posing this next question to you, Jenny, because you have diabetes, and you would have a real feeling for what this is.
Maybe.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see. Hopefully. No, I think you will. So I hear this from either parents or spouses usually. And it's something we make light of in community and joke about. Like I've said before to my daughter, when she was little, I'm going to test your blood sugar. And if it's not high or low, you're in trouble, right? Because you kind of can't tell, like, is somebody acting a certain way because they're altered, or are they acting a certain way because they're,
right,
a pain in the ass. So
right.
Which isn't. But that always makes me feel like, what is the person with diabetes hearing when they're altered? And so that's what I want to understand. And we're going to do both, but let's start with higher blood sugar. So I know there's no Mendoza line that you can point to perfectly, but I've always said in the past that as Arden is active, if her blood sugar starts to creep above 160, 180, I could see her slow down, her reactions get slower, things like that. We know that people get cloudier. We've talked about on the podcast a million times as you get higher and higher. But what's it like to be in your head when your blood sugar's higher? Like, what if your kids are acting up, or your husband's being unreasonable, or you have to make dinner? What does that feel like to you?
Yeah. I think to me, it feels, one, I'm just annoyed, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not annoyance with them. It's annoyance for the number, for why ever it is where it is, mm-hmm. right? And it can be even worse if it was like a bad site, right? That now, you know, you're like fiddling with for a while to actually get it.
Okay.
And I think then the mental piece of that then comes when you're trying to manage this number that you're not happy with, and somebody interrupts that train of thought, and not interrupt by, they're not like doing it intentionally to ask you, you know, can we have applesauce for dinner, Mom? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, it's just a piece in the mix. So I think mine is more like, it's just a mental struggle at that point. And I do also tend to, I get kind of headachy.
Okay.
Not so much when I have lows, but more so when I am higher. It's that like mental, that foggy kind of piece. And it makes me feel headachy. Not the kind that's like a throbbing, but it's like that cloudy kind of headache that you get.
Yep.
And again, that's just an irritating factor in and of itself too.
So there's a mechanical portion of it where it is, you know, for whatever reason, either maybe you missed on a bolus, or like you said, your site went wrong or something. So there's a mechanical piece. Like, I need to fix this thing, which becomes irritating as it would to any person. Like if I walked into a door frame, I'd be like, I cannot believe I just walked into a door frame like that. So you've got that going on.
Right.
And then you have the actual act of having to fix it. And then you're focused on that. Someone else comes in. So this is still all mechanical, but then the headache happens. And that's not something like a warning light on your palm doesn't go off and say, Jenny's got a headache now. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So when a 5-year-old comes at you, you can't say to yourself, I feel a pain in my head that I'm not even aware of yet. I'm going to react. You don't have that's not how thinking works. So then your just level of irritation here's how my wife puts it around her period. She'll tell me, I'm not being unreasonable. I just have less space for bullshit is how she puts it.
That's really great. I'm going to use that because that's fabulous.
I think she's covering for herself, but I understand the intent of what she's saying. So there's a ceiling in people before they get upset. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's all kinds of outside irritants that can limit that ceiling, but just your blood sugar being higher physically can take away from your ability to abide bullshit, basically, I guess.
Correct. And, you know, from my standpoint too, you know, with the work that I do and all of the data management that I do and interpreting things for people, I mean, the majority of my management is just because I want to be healthy, right? But the other piece of it is it also leads into my work. Can I get work done really well if I'm sitting really high or if I'm sitting really low? My brain isn't functioning well on either level. Mm-hmm. So that management piece is always also there to benefit all the people that I work with. So I'm not typing out a message that's like, you know, I don't know why your blood sugar is high.
Mary, why don't you just figure it out yourself? Like, I paid this lady to help me with my blood sugar and she yelled at me. Yeah, that wouldn't be great. No, but I want people to understand that and I think they do, and by do, I think they do understand that a higher blood sugar could be an issue. But the problem is, again, that you don't walk around as a person with diabetes with your blood sugar across your forehead. So when I come up to you, you're just Jenny to me. I don't know if your blood sugar is 220 and you have a headache.
Right.
And so I guess what should those people be looking for so that they can back up and go, oh, you know what, this could be that? Because even if I understand that your blood sugar, say I come up to you, you react oddly, and I immediately understand it's your blood sugar that's high. If I say to you, oh, your blood sugar is high, I'm sorry, that's just going to make it worse, right?
Yeah.
That's the diabetes equivalent of me saying, oh, you have your period, I won't bring up the car payment right now.
Right.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, kind of. And I think it does bring up a good point though, especially for, I think this goes more for adults who have a spouse or a significant other or partner or whatever. Because like Nathan, he's got Dexcom Follow, he's got my stuff, but I mean, he doesn't keep it open and follow me all day. He's got the alarm set and all of that for like high and low. But other than that, I mean, he lets me alone, honestly, which I'm very thankful for. Outside of counting carbs for me, if he's like done dinner or something, which is awesome. Yeah. But in that regard, I think it also means that as the person with diabetes, you kind of also have to share more at times, because as I do more often with my kids, I share with them, this is what I feel like right now, and go color in your color book for like 10 minutes while mommy changes her bad pod or whatever it is, but I think it means that you have to express a little bit in order to decrease the chance that somebody's going to interpret your reaction to something in the wrong way. Because certainly, I mean, that's happened. I've been married a long time, and there's definitely been like blood sugar reasons for reactions that didn't really come out as response that I meant it to come out kind of sounding like.
Right.
So I think sometimes you have to be open enough to be able to say, hey, I need this like 15 minutes to manage around this. Come back and like ask me in a bit.
But that could come out as, I wish I would have dated your brother instead.
Right. There you go.
Okay. Well, so I have a little context around this, which I've mentioned off and on in the podcast over like the last year or so. And it's just that my iron level got really low. And I completely understand what you're saying. Like saying words, not having the intention behind them that the words have, and also not being able to see that it's happening. Like that's the interesting thing. Like when you're saying something to somebody, even if it's a tone, just the wrong tone, and you don't know it's the wrong tone while you're saying it. Like when you're being sarcastic with somebody, when you're in an argument, you're like, I'm going to ramp this up right now. You're aware you're going to do it. Like I'm going to say something now that's going to make you upset, but it's happening. And not only do you not know it's happening, but you don't think it's happening. And that's the real fascinating part. Like, is that you're doing this, it feels like it's you doing it, but it's just that there's a level of a trace element or something in your body. For me, it was iron. For you, it's going to be not enough insulin, and you're not yourself. And it's tough because you're an adult who's ultra aware of their blood sugars. Like really, like you do an amazing job for yourself. So Thanks. Maybe, well, Jenny, stop. You can see it coming. We're all trying, right? One way or the other. But my point is that maybe you've been able to teach yourself over time to go, my number's up. Like I won't get involved in an important conversation right now, or I'll send my kids off to color for a second so that I don't tell them I wish I didn't have children.
There you go. Yes.
But when your kid's 16 or you're 24 and you've had diabetes for a year and a half and you're at work, like you're not going to see that coming like that.
No. And mine's more so in terms of like spit out of things that I don't even know that I've like said the way that I've said is more so even when I'm low, honestly.
Yeah. Let's switch to that idea now.
There's much more like it's like a fragment of like thought in your brain. You're trying to manage how you're feeling with this low while you're probably waiting for the low to not be low anymore. Mm-hmm. And in that come the things of life. I mean, unless you're a single person and not interacting with kids or adults or other people around you, there's always someone you're interacting with. And that interaction then in that time period where your brain isn't really firing all the right ways, you don't interpret it coming out in sort of the jagged way that it does. And then aftermath is often, well, I'm really sorry, or, I didn't mean that, or I'm low. Right. I felt like crap and you bugged me.
Does it feel like that afterwards? Like after it's over and you're okay, do you have the guilt that you did something wrong? Because it's not true. right? You know?
Right. I mean, only in the scenario that, we may have been potentially discussing something or whatnot, and that was the case during that discussion. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
not obviously every time by any means do I feel bad about,
Yeah, good.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a hard thing. And sometimes even with lows, I think that I will have responded to something and it's been in my head that I've actually, and my husband will be like, did you hear what I asked you? And I'll be like, I told you, blah, blah, whatever. And he's like, no, really.
You didn't say it out loud.
You didn't say it out loud. And I'll be like, okay.
So
it's just like that muddiness that I think commented about before, when I feel like I'm like, sort of like.
But that's the real low. There's a slide in there.
There is.
In the beginning, right? And numbers wise doesn't really matter. But, if the way I think of it with Arden is maybe between, I would say at 65, Arden maintains herself. Hey, Dad, I feel dizzy. Like she's just like that. She's a little kind of jokey about it right there. It's almost like you could be like, hey, let's not do anything and see if you die. And she'd be like,
there's
okay.
There's like a giddiness at that level,
right.
But it's,
Right. Mm-hmm. She's elated for some reason right there. Okay. And then it goes down and her energy drops away. But if you were to catch her there, if somehow she got past the elated part into that part, and that's where you first intersected her, she'd be snappy, like real short and nasty, right? And then I think after the nasty is what you were just talking about, where the lost fragments of thoughts are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost like and then there's, falling over and not being able to help yourself. But as it's happening, are you able to consciously think, hey, my brain's trying to shut off and I'm the only one who's going to stop it?
Right.
Or does it turn into just a physical, like, eat something feeling?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I can remember a specific time soon after my first was born. We had gone, I think it was to Kohl's actually. And I was standing and I was nursing, obvious at that point. So all the fluxes that can kind of come with blood sugar and whatnot, mostly like lows. And my husband had gone off looking for something in like the men's department. And I was standing like in the toy department. We were looking for something specific for our little guy. And I can remember feeling low, and like, you can determine like those dropping lows. I was dropping. And so I sat down with my baby on the floor, right, in the baby department. And I get out, my glucose tablets, and I'm eating my glucose tablets. And I had, my husband found me. I mean, I was fine, but I was sitting there just like waiting for the low to fix itself because I knew that I had taken care of it. But in that, I had also gotten my phone out and I was texting him to come to the kids department, right? Because I was low. Only I never hit send. Okay. I was just like, typing. So that's kind of that like broken like thought kind of that can happen.
Wow. Do you ever in a moment like that, are you cognizant enough to think, don't fall forward on the baby? Like, do you have those feelings like, oh, I'll try.
That's kind of the reason that I sat down. I mean, from my back thought to what I was doing, I would have thought, I need to sit down. I've got a baby who clearly can't stand on his own yet. I mean, I think he was probably like 6 months old or something. Yeah. And sit down, treat your low blood sugar. I mean, and I've always been able to treat. So I've never had an issue with not being able to help myself outside of like when I was a teen with my parents. Yeah. But it is. I mean, in those instances, sometimes there's not enough to like even like be angry. You just can't even communicate quite right.
It's interesting. It's super interesting to me the way that, first of all, the way your body handles a falling blood sugar. It's when you start losing faculties, it's your body shutting down. It's basically services. It's like, oh, we don't need that one. Like, and it just, it has this finite amount of sugar in your blood, and its goal is to keep your brain running. Correct. Right. And so it starts shutting.
Everything else stops.
Yeah. All right. Stop sending sugar to this idea and this idea. And so you're like going down, and it's your body going like, it really is. It's like, let's try to see how long we can stay alive until something intervenes. But you describe the actual actions you take very similarly. Like, all right, like, okay, I'm not okay. I'll sit down. I'll start taking these things. That's more important than telling someone, right? Now it's important to tell, like, you're doing the same thing. You're making these, like,
it's just that you're not like consciously, it's almost like your brain, like those like files in the back that were like, do this now.
Right.
They take over, even though you're not really like consciously aware that you're like sitting down and like drinking your juice box or whatever it is. You do it because it's a habit and you know that that's what you need to do with this symptom.
Would you, looking back on a scenario like that, if the Gvoke HypoPen existed then, would you, being with your baby, would that have been enough for you to be like, I'm not going to take tablets, I'm going to hit myself with glucagon? Or no, you still would have handled it that way?
You know, possibly, with what I remember about that being such a quick drop in my blood sugar. I mean, it's not like we were running around the store either. It was just like I'd probably nursed before we went in the store to keep him happy, and like, whoop, there it was, and enough. 2 feet into the store. But I mean, maybe. I mean, I certainly, I've got like an extra Baqsimi that I typically take out, especially when we're like traipsing around the neighborhood to the parks and whatever. Right. I mean, my 8-year-old knows about it. So possibly I might have done that.
It just occurs to me with the Baqsimi and like the Gvoke now being like ready to go. Like prior to that, I only ever thought of glucagon as like you passed out and somebody came upon you and gave it to you. Like that's how it felt. But now all of a sudden, like it's there and it's easy to use. And like, I wondered about that, like how you would think about it.
Yeah. You could. I mean, it's certainly not a bad thought by any means, especially I've worked with a couple of women through pregnancy and then postpartum who've had spouses who've been military. And so they have, after a certain amount of time postpartum, you know, their spouse goes back, you know, might be deployed again someplace completely away from where they are. They're pretty much on their own with a baby. They might have the support of friends or family coming in once in a while, but that's not at 2:00 in the morning. So, you know, in a case like that, where you're dropping or really low and you're really worried about it, not sure. I mean, that's what a product like that is there for. It's also the benefit potentially of, you know, like mini dosing that age-old red lily glucagon.
Right. So here's a question then, because I came at this from the idea of the people who are going to interact with a person who's either too high or too low. I have to be honest. When Arden in the past has been too low, where she's refusing, I just go with like forceful, because I think like I've tried talking her, like, you know, I've gone with the, come on, sweetie, drink it. It's really important. Like that stuff, that doesn't go. It's almost like you're not talking to the complete her.
No.
You know, and so you make these declarative, forceful statements. Drink the juice. Drink it. Drink the juice. Drink the juice. Drink. And I'm talking like, I know people say to me all the time, you know, you must know what it's like to raise a little kid with diabetes back before all the technology. And I don't talk about it very much, but it's really bad. And so, you know, like back before CGMs and all that, it's 3:00 in the morning. You're there with a 6-year-old and you're like, Arden, drink the juice, like drink the goddamn juice right now, you know, and because there also was no CGM, like at some point.
No.
So I literally don't know what's happening. Yeah. I'm like, you know, and you're not yelling, you're going to die, but it's how it feels in your head when you're talking to them. And I think that's much easier to figure out with a low blood sugar, right? Like that's obvious to people, but it's always the high ones that make I feel badly. Like I feel badly when I've used this example over and over again, but it sticks with me like right in the center of my heart so much that a woman found the podcast. It helped her daughter. And when she sent me a note months later to thank me, she said, I really just thought my daughter was a bitch, her words, and that we weren't going to get along for our whole life. And it turns out my daughter's a lovely person. And I didn't know because her blood sugar was always high. And that makes me want to cry. And, you know, and the idea that could happen either at the beginning, right? Like you'll hear people say, oh, I didn't realize, you know, that stuff happened. Or I helped somebody recently with a young kid who has autism. And at the end of talking, I said, hey, you might see a difference in, just how personality and stuff. And the person was so sure that that wasn't going to happen. And then 3 days later said to me, he is happier. And I said, yeah, like you don't know. And then that's a sadder situation because then the poor kid couldn't tell, isn't verbal to begin with very much. But I just think about that for everybody else. Like if you're running around with blood sugars that are 170 all the time, your body gets used to it. So physically you think you're okay, but you're not. Like you're not the person you were going to be without diabetes, And so there's just...
Well, and even from a mental standpoint too, even from performance,
right.
You may not be putting out everything you possibly could, putting things together, whether it's in school or college or job or whatever, because your brain is really not working at the level of glucose that is healthy for it to work at.
This conversation is at the core why I initially years ago brusqued so hard at the idea of better high than low. I was like, I don't think that's right. I think that does not seem right to me. I've known people who through a lifetime were not who they were supposed to be. I just know it you lose your, it's it. Every day you lose is gone. Every hour you lose is gone. And then days turn into months that turn into years. And before you know it, people just think you're a prick. And, and that's just not.
And you may not be at all.
Yeah. Maybe with another 2 units of basal all day long, you would have been an absolutely delightful person. And then I think about the people on the other side who have to deal with you, who love you. And then think, oh, I love a guy who's just a jerk, but maybe isn't. Or, vice versa, or your kids, or I don't know. I want people to be very aware that outside of a normal range, that the lack of or addition of sugar in your blood is having a real big impact on your personality and your ability to live and make decisions and everything.
Right. I mean, I've even had parents who've asked me, how do you discipline your child with diabetes when you're like, do you always refer back to the blood sugar to begin with? Or, do you just discipline them as if they don't have diabetes? And quite honestly, I think if they require discipline because they threw the stone through the front window because they were aiming and wanted to do it, I mean, really, unless their blood sugar is like
12, yeah,
really either low or really high.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was like a decision on their part. They deserve to be punished,
right?
Whatever way that you're going to punish.
If your blood sugar is 150 and you're breaking windows, you're just a
you're just a sassy child.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, if your blood sugar's been 220 for your whole life and you can't do well in math, it might not be because you're not good at math, right? And you got to make that decision.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's been 1 or 2 times that Arden's been so low that she has said horrible things to me. And I bear down and I think that's the blood sugar and I just let it go. But you really have to be ready for it, because it's hard not to react.
Right.
I mean, Jenny, I'll bleep this out later, but when an 8-year-old calls you a mother, you're like, ooh, hold on.
Like, okay, well, there.
Please drink the juice.
Not expect that.
I wasn't looking for this. I didn't recognize.
I'm just trying to help you. That's all.
And and I've heard adults talk about it too, in a married situation where one person's physically stronger than the other person, and can get low and then get violent, like not on purpose, right? And now you're a much different situation.
Yeah, I actually had that when I was working in DC. An older couple had actually come into our diabetes clinic, and the man was complaining. He's like, sometimes I'm scared. I think she had gone to the bathroom or something, and then we were just chatting, and I think it was on the topic of like hypos. And he brought up, he's like, sometimes I'm kind of scared of her. He's like, one day she threw a coffee cup at me. And I was like, okay, well, that wasn't really your wife. That was the low blood sugar.
Yeah.
But
I will tell you, if her blood sugar's ever 95 and she throws something at you, I don't think she likes you.
That's right. Exactly. Then there was something you did really nasty wrong to her. So,
well, that's okay. I appreciate you talking about this with me too. That was really good. Could you just not talk to Jenny every day? I know I could. I wish I could, actually. It just doesn't work out like that. Anyway, Jenny does this for a living at integrateddiabetes.com, and you can check her out there. There's a link in the show notes. What comes next is about the T1D exchange. If you heard it in the last episode with Jenny and you haven't done it, let's get to it. But if you haven't, the T1D exchange needs your help. And the help they need is super simple to give. You just go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. That's my link. Use that link. And then when you get there, click on Join Our Registry Now. And after that, you complete the simple, quick survey. It's for U.S. residents only, but it's so easy. Like right now, if you did it right now, look at your watch. Well, you probably don't have a watch. Pick up your phone, touch the face of it. If you did it right now, you'd be done in less than 10 minutes. It took me 3 hours to bring you this episode, and this is all I'm asking in return. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I mean, seriously, I had to book Jenny, record the thing, edit it. I mean, you notice how there's no like pops and clicks and noises and nothing distracting while you're listening? You're welcome. That was me, Scott. Click, click, click with the mouse. I fixed the whole thing for you. Hours it took. Like, you're just like, oh, it was a quick 25-minute episode. It was nice. Scott said insulin's important, blah, blah. No. There's more than that. It's deep. It's deep. It's building a narrative in your life about type 1 diabetes, giving you the tools and the access to information for the free. And all I ask is that you go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I only need 6,000 of you to do it. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of downloads last month. I just need 6 of you. You know what I'm saying? Of the hundreds of thousands of downloads, I need 6,000. I'm tired of saying it too. I know you're tired of hearing it. I'm tired of saying it. But I mean, at some point, one of us has got to pick up the mantle and do their part. I can only do this. I filled out the survey. It was easy. All right, I'm going to stop. I apologize. That was too much. Too much. I should just say t1dexchange.org/juicebox. You need to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1. Please go fill it out if you have the chance. I mean, that's how I should say it. But I mean, come on. This podcast is amazing and it's free. And what do I say to you? You know, if you want to try out an Omnipod, go to omnipod.com/juicebox. I say, if you want to check out a Dexcom, go to dexcom.com/juicebox. I say, want to get a great meter? contournext.com/juicebox. I say, hey, my daughter's got this Gvoke Hypo pen. You should check it out. That's it. I mean, you don't have to check it out. I'm not telling you to buy an Omnipod. It's not like if you don't buy an Omnipod, you're not allowed to listen anymore. I'm just saying, if you're going to, go check it out. But this T1D exchange thing, I mean, you're on the internet constantly. I see the people in my life. I know you don't put the phone down, and I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, while you're doing it, you know what I mean? t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Help a guy out a little bit. Don't make me beg you. It's embarrassing. I'll tell you what. If the T1D exchange contacts me at the end of the month, next month, at the end of June, and says, we've added 1,000 new people to the registry thanks to you. If they say that, what will I do? I will do an online talk about using insulin once a week in July. Once a week, okay? I'll come on. I'll do it on Zoom. It'll be free, obviously, because you helped me out with the T1D exchange thing. And I will answer everyone's questions as long as I can. If we reach 1,000. Now, if we reach 1,500, I'll get Jenny on one of those calls. If you do 2,000, I'll do the calls, right? Every day, every week in July. Jenny once. And what else will I do? I'll do something else that's cool. I don't know what yet, but trust me, I'll come through. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Use the link, complete the survey. That's it.